Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Flashpoint explored. If you think the latest Flash movie is taking a long time to hit the screen, then you must be new to the Scarlet Speedster's on-screen history. A movie about Central City's greatest hero has been in development since the 1980s, technically, and to be honest, we don't blame the producers. The entire concept of the Speed Force is about as easily translatable to the screen as explaining the Fermi Paradox to an 8th grader. CW's TV show has mostly managed to capture the essence of the Flash, and the DCEU is trying its best to follow it up by adapting a story that fundamentally changed DC history. When Barry Allen caused the events of Flashpoint, little did he know he was birthing 52 new universes with the literal steps he was taking. His selfishness created an alternate timeline where Superman was missing, Batman wasn't Bruce Wayne, Wonder Woman and Aquaman became conquerors, and he himself had no powers to speak of. Eventually, of course, Barry regained his powers and fixed the timeline after thwarting his eternal fanboy-turned rival Eobard Thawne. But what if he hadn't? What if, out of sheer improbability, Barry Allen could never put the world back together again? What horrors would emerge in the absence of the Scarlet Speedster? And how would they proceed to treat all of reality itself? Those are the questions we'll be answering in this video. This is Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Flashpoint explored. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Here are a couple of things you should know before we explain the issue. Okay, so before we explain the event, we'll try to explain to you what the Speed Force itself is. While its name might seem self-explanatory, it isn't that simple. The Speed Force is one of the 7 cosmic forces that grant powers to all superhuman beings in the DC multiverse. It isn't just something that speeds you up. It is the very embodiment of the concept of velocity and motion. In essence, the Speed Force is what keeps time moving forward and space continuously growing. This is why most of the time, when you see Barry Allen pulling off an amazing 10-person knockdown sequence on a splash page, you think, oh man, I want to be as fast as the Flash. But really, my friend, you just want to be able to control time like the Flash. Speaking of controlling time like the Flash, we also need to talk about Eobard Thawne and his unique connection with this force. Now, we all know that Thawne is basically the stand to Barry Allen's Eminem. He's a 25th century scientist, professor, museum curator, pick your continuity, who is such a massive fan of the Flash that he actively wants to kill him and take his place. Thawne would eventually go on to become the Reverse Flash, one of the Scarlet Speedster's most iconic nemesis, and torment his hero by traveling back in time and literally messing with his entire life. Professor Zoom is responsible for some of the worst tragedies to have ever taken place in Barry Allen's life, most notably the fact that it was he who killed Barry's mom that fateful night. Now here's the thing, we don't want to start a turf war, but recall what MCU Tony Stark says in Avengers Endgame when past Thanos invades his timeline. You mess with time, it tends to mess back. This isn't true for the Reverse Flash. Because Thawne wields the negative Speed Force, he also possesses the ability to freely move through time with no personal consequences. Think of the negative Speed Force more like a virus than an opposite, one that is capable of infecting the Speed Force itself, while allowing its wielder relative mastery over the concept of time. This is why Barry needs the cosmic treadmill, because he uses the machine to go against the very function of his powers. As long as Barry keeps moving forward, he doesn't upset the natural order of things. The Speed Force is supposed to be moving in one direction after all, so when it faces pushback, it tends to mess things up. And now that we've explained all that, let's look at what happened during the original Flashpoint event. Reality Unmade, Realities Remade. What went down during the original Flashpoint? Imagine a world where Bruce Wayne isn't Batman. In fact, he isn't even alive. That night in Crime Alley, it was Bruce who died, and Thomas and Martha Wayne who acted as witnesses. Imagine a world where Superman doesn't crash land near a Kansas farm owned by a kind, loving, morally upright couple, but instead in the city of Metropolis, which is the hub of scientific experimentation in the United States. Imagine a world where Wonder Woman and Aquaman aren't gods trying to adapt to humans, they're trying to conquer them, carving up planet Earth amongst themselves as it crumbles to ashes. And imagine a world where their comrades Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, and the Flash never existed. Well, you don't have to rack your brain too much, because this is the reality that Barry Allen wakes up in the Flashpoint, issue number 1. Barry Allen had always led a life designed around the concept of rebuilding. He started doing so ever since his mother died. He found love, lost it, then found it again. He found a family of speedsters with whom he could run his cares away, and he even found friends in the Justice League. But none of that could ever take away the pain caused by the death of his mother. And then one day he decided it was too much, and something needed to change. Driven by an insane urge to revive his mother, Barry Allen went back in time to prevent it from happening in the first place. And in doing so, ended up creating the world we just spent a minute asking you to imagine. In the Flashpoint universe, Thomas Wayne ended up becoming the Batman, a lethal vigilante with no qualms about leaving dead bodies in his wake. Martha Wayne went insane after hearing about her son's death, gave herself a Glasgow smile, and became the Joker. Kal-El was kept in confinement ever since he landed on Earth, and became so weak that he looked more like elongated man, if anything. Diana and Arthur fell in love, then fell out of love, and decided the whole world needed to pay the price. And Barry Allen got the one thing he always wanted. He got his mom back. Still, his memories didn't line up with the fact that his mom was alive again, so he tracked down Batman in order to figure out how to fix all of it. Barry theorized that Reverse Flash was behind whatever was happening because he took one glimpse at him and knew of Thawne's time-traveling abilities. So he convinced Thomas Wayne to help him recreate the experiment that made him the Flash, so he could set his world right before returning to his own. The first attempt failed, and Barry was burnt badly. But after he convinced Thomas that he was his only hope of saving Bruce, Dr. Wayne agreed to recreate the experiment a second time. This time, it was successful, and Barry Allen once again became the Flash. Alongside Batman, Cyborg, who was this timeline's greatest hero, and Captain Thunder, he went to fight on the front lines of the Amazon Atlantean War and Newt the Mascara when Thawne unveiled himself to Barry and told him the truth. He wasn't in an alternative timeline. This was the original DC timeline, which had been changed by Barry himself, who had used the cosmic treadmill to go back in time and prevent his mother from being killed. When Barry encountered Thawne, he pulled the entire Speed Force into himself, which fractured the timeline so hard that Reverse Flash became a temporal anomaly, while Barry Allen got to have the life he always wanted. The Flash did what heroes do. He saved the day and set things right. After bringing the Amazon Atlantean War to an end, he ran back in time to stop himself from saving Nora and put everything back in place. All this was only possible because Barry's hope that recreating his accident would give him his powers back turned out to be true. But in the Dark Multiverse, hope is a futile thing, as Barry is about to find out to his utter dismay. The catastrophic consequences of an experiment gone wrong the night Barry Allen died. The multiversal entity Tempest Fugonaut turns his gaze to an Earth in the Dark Multiverse that is still stuck in the Flashpoint reality. We see a familiar scene laid out in front of us. Barry Allen doused in chemicals, strapped to an electric chair on a rainy night. Thomas Wayne asks him if he's sure he wants to do this, and Barry assures him that this is how he became the Flash, the first time around. With his mind fixed on bringing his son back to life, Dr. Wayne pushes the lever and says the all too familiar phrase, "They say lightning never strikes twice." In the Positive Matter universe, it did. After Barry suffered third-degree burns over 75% of his body, it was restored when he and Thomas gave the hole struck by lightning deal a second shot. But this is the Dark Multiverse. Here, even a single shot is 50-50 on the best of days. And by that logic, this was probably the worst day of Barry Allen's life. Instead of giving Barry a near-death experience, the bolt outright killed him, and with him, all hope of restoring the Flashpoint reality back to normal. This brought the Reverse Flash, who had been lurking in the shadows all this while, to the forefront. He took a minute to ponder over the fact that Barry's death might erase him from existence, because, as he's often said before, if Barry Allen doesn't become the Flash, Eobard Thawne doesn't become Professor Zoom. But with Barry dead, Thawne notes that he has truly become a paradoxical existence, a man displaced from his own timeline, and now lacking the very purpose that created him. He continues to lament that Barry, in his own haste to see his mommy again, didn't fully appreciate the lengths that Thawne had gone to in order to make him miserable. He tells his former hero adversary's corpse about how he should feel a sense of loss at his passing. After all, the Flash had defined Eobard's life to the point it broke his sanity into pieces, so fine that no amount of Gorilla Glue could keep it all together. Instead, he says now that Barry had shown him his disgusting morality. All Thawne could feel was disappointment. He even denounces the Flash as an adversary, calling his single-minded pursuit of Barry Allen a waste of time, which is correct, but not in the sense Thawne says it over here. He takes Allen's Flash ring off his fingers and claims it as a war trophy, saying, "I'll wear this now, a badge of honor, a reminder, so I don't let what happened to you happen to me." A ray of hope for the broken bat, a flash of death for the rest of the world. No sooner had he put on the flash ring than he was attacked by Thomas Wayne from behind. Eobard sighs the same sorry sigh he always lets slip when someone tries to attack him, because all of them, especially Batman, should know that a direct assault is never going to work on him. He quickly deposits the batarangs that were flung at him in Batman's shoulders and proceeds to list all the ways in which he could kill him. He taunts Bruce by telling him he has no chance, standing up to a man who can accelerate or decelerate his aging process, atomize him with a touch, write him out of existence, or just ram his hand through Bruce like a harpoon through a whale. But given that his adversary was clearly on the brink of death, one of Thawne's other time-based powers reveal a deliciously twisted truth to him. The man he was fighting wasn't Bruce Wayne. Eobard takes his time going through Thomas's memories, reviewing his meeting with Barry Allen, chuckling when his own suit fell out of the flash ring, and realizing that despite the death of the very man who had promised to bring him his son back, Thomas Wayne still had hope. And to Thawne's crazy mind, this wasn't something to be sniggered at. It was something to be cherished. He realized that with Barry Allen erased from existence, he was now the only person in the universe with a connection to an extremity of the Speed Force, positive or negative, and his crazy mind was salivating at the prospect of the world it would create. He thanks Barry for the gift he has given him and tells Thomas he'll see him soon. As Thawne speeds through the streets of his desolate reality, he can feel the past, present, and future of many of its denizens. Given that the reality itself is on the brink of annihilation, it does make sense that Reverse Flash will be able to sense these things. He comments on the fact that the world he's in represents both hope and despair. Barry Allen had hoped to change his lonesome fate by going back in time and saving his mother from a fate that was destined to take place. It ruined the lives of millions on Earth and trillions across the cosmos. Thawne was ecstatic at the prospect of molding such a fractured existence in his own image, and he knew just where to begin. America's darkest hour, Eobard Thawne becomes America's new hope, the Flash. The scenery shifts to the White House, where we see Victor Stone holding a confidential meeting with the President of the United States. Being the only government-endorsed superhero in America, he took it upon himself to look for other enhanced individuals, like him, to help safeguard the bastion of liberty from the acts of not one, but two divine tyrants. But most of the obscure names he'd assembled for his enhanced strike unit abandoned him the moment they realized that reality's greatest hero was not going to fight by their side. Batman had refused to work with Cyborg, so Victor was forced to negotiate with the one still willing to fight. Through conviction, persuasion, and some rather liberal wallet greasing, he was able to put together a team that included Citizen Cold, Pied Piper, and the Green Lantern Abin Sur. Both parties were in the midst of negotiating strategies for dealing with the Amazonian Atlantean threat when Thawne sauntered into the Oval Office and killed every superpowered individual within it. He kills the Enchantress by causing her to rapidly age to the point her body rots in an instant, before revealing to the president that he held his office thanks to Thawne's time-traveling shenanigans. Eobard reveals that over the years he whispered into the right ears and got the necessary elections rigged to get this particular man into power. Cyborg is able to pull out one final rallying cry out of his butt when he commands all units to converge on the POTUS's location and blasts Eobard with ultra-amplified sonic waves that momentarily stun him, but that's akin to a mildly annoying flea bite for the Speedster, who can travel 14,000 times faster than the speed of sound. Thawne fries Victor's EMP receivers before atomizing him and getting back to the point he was making to the president. The Reverse Flash said, "Diana has Britain, Greece, all those places. Arthur has the 7 Seas and more. I want America." He assures his stooge that he can still be in the administrative position of power. Thawne didn't want America to go to work for it. He just wanted to own it. And so the very next day, the President of the United States announced that America had a new superhero who was going to single-handedly end both the Atlantean and Amazonian threat to her shores. He introduces every watching American to the Flash, who promises to end the threats his great country was facing once and for all, saying, "Trust me when I say this, they'll never see me coming." The fragility and reality of hope, Eobard Thawne becomes Barry Allen. We see the new symbol of hope for America with his feet up on the resolute desk, pondering the nature of said hope. His aide, the President of America, reminds him that he has to take care of the Amazonian and Atlantean threats, but he brushes it off with the talk of elections, while his mind focuses on his real problem, Barry Allen. Eobard Thawne had spent his entire life obsessed with the man to the point that he changed his own face to look like his. But now that Barry was gone, he found he couldn't detach himself from his personal hero's legacy. Thawne remarks that this world they live in was created by one man's hope, saying there is an audacity to that, something to admire. He asks his stooge whether hope only matters if those with the power and will to enforce it do something about it. The president, of course, just wants to make it out of there alive, so Thawne reminds him that he'd simply bring him back to life informing him that his death would take place at Thawne's whim, and that he should do fine finding some hope in that. The scene switches to show Thomas Wayne brooding in his Batcave, with the Flash announcement playing on a screen behind him and Barry Allen's crisp carcass laying in front of him. He muses over the fact that Barry called Thawne even more powerful than he was. If that was true, and if he indeed possesses all of Barry's abilities, and then some, then what did that mean for his life? And more importantly, what did that mean for his son? Batman has just received a classified message from Victor Stone. When the Flash rushes into the Batcave, he praises Stone's resilience, commending him for having the wherewithal to back up his consciousness to the Ethernet. Batman quips that he should be busy running the president behind the scenes, but Professor Zoom simply says that he can be in many places at once. The pair have a conversation about the heinous acts that Eobard had committed toward Barry Allen. Thawne confirms that he did kill Nora Allen, but what truly gives him his indescribable pleasure is the fact that Barry had the gall to hope against hope that he could fix the unfixable. Thawne explains to Thomas that the negative speed force allows him to weave through time like a skilled craftsman. Barry Allen, on the other hand, preferred to tear right through the fabric to get to his end goal. His brashness created the perfect playing field for him, and Thawne is now going to become its crazy king. Thomas Wayne clarifies that he did not much care for Eobard Thawne. As far as he was concerned, Thawne was dangerous, and he would do everything in his power to stop the man, except he was the only one who could bring Bruce back. The father in Thomas Wayne asks him if he can help bring Bruce back, and would he, if it were possible. Thawne replies that he could fix everything wrong with Thomas's life in an instant if he wanted to, but he doesn't, so he won't. Jetting out of the Batcave and leaving a trail of red lightning in his wake, Eobard knew that this would only light a fire in Thomas's mind. He knew that Batman would stop at nothing to bring him down, and beat him within an inch of his life if it were only to see his dead son again. And so a maniacal Reverse Flash proclaims to his dead rival that he is becoming just like him as he makes his way to Paris. The Flash declares war, and Batman looks for a cure. We arrive at the Eiffel Tower to bear witness to a massacre. The Atlanteans had already sunk the once great city during their war with the Amazonians. The 1,000 proud soldiers lying dead on the battlefield all lost their lives to the Flash, who had their king at his mercy. Eobard confesses to Arthur that attacking was not a personal decision, it was pure politics. He reminds him that he could have just as easily wiped them out of existence, or killed his entire empire in the blink of an eye. Instead, he just took out a token force and impaled their king with his own trident. In Thawne's mind, this was mercy. And besides, he thought the Queen would be more reasonable anyway, as the panel zooms out to show us Aquaman hanging lifeless from the trident of Poseidon with the body of his followers strewn about like trash at a junkyard. In the meantime, we catch up with Thomas Wayne, who is in an underground facility with a robot that inhabits the consciousness of Victor Stone. Thomas cracks a rare joke, asking Cyborg if he should call him Robbie, since he was a robot now. But Victor quickly shuts him down and reminds him of their mission. The classified document he had sent to Thomas was regarding a classified government project, codenamed Superman. Dr. Wayne initially expresses his hesitation about using this alien in their fight against their divine conquerors, but Stone manages to convince him that this was their best shot at standing a chance against any of the other superpowered individuals who had appeared on their planet in the past few years, including Eobard Thawne. So Batman and Cyborg orchestrate a jailbreak for Kal-El and take him to Wayne Manor, where he spends 5 days, absorbing 144 million watts of solar energy and counting. Victor Stone is in awe of the godlike potential that this being was capable of harnessing, and given the fact that despite being isolated, he had a strict no-killing rule, he might just become the superhero the world needs. But all Thomas can think about is that gun he swiped from the defense facility as part of his contingency plans. Presently, the Flash dumps Aquaman's lifeless body at Wonder Woman's feet and warns her to back off of America because he owns it. He says that she and her old gods are finished and that there is a new god in town now. She asks him what would happen if she didn't. He simply tells her, "I won't be merciful." He does a rather successful press run back home, taking pictures with the president on the front line of the White House and fixing the world with medieval diplomacy. But he isn't a fool. He knows that sooner or later the Atlanteans will attack America in retaliation for losing their king. Ocean Master will also want revenge, so he is prepared for anything that can potentially happen. But as he greets the entire Atlantean fleet at the northeastern coast of the United States, he senses something off. None of the Atlantean ships were firing at him. In fact, it was the opposite. They were standing still awaiting orders. But as he was trying to figure out just what was going on, a familiar sonic boom pierced the skies as Thawne was shocked out of his boots by a rejuvenated son of Krypton. Alliances, betrayals, and endless change, the fate of the Dark Flashpoint. Superman engages the Flash in battle, who quickly realizes he's no match for the Kryptonian in a physical battle. Thawne gets taken by surprise when Kal-El rams him at full speed. He's annoyed when the Kryptonian managed to break out of his trap by simply blowing the rocks apart. And he gets pissed when Superman's heat vision manages to graze him, what with it being faster than the speed of light and all. He tries to blitz Kal-El instead, hoping to disorient him enough and break him that way, but turns out he's the one who's getting played all this while. Superman lures him into a spot where Batman and Cyborg are already waiting, with ultrasonic wave emitters, whose frequency was strong enough to render anyone who steps within it immobile. Everything seemed to be going according to plan. Even though Superman was hurting alongside Thawne, they were both contained for the moment. That wasn't enough for Thomas Wayne. He betrays Cyborg by enacting lethal force against Thawne and causing his allies' systems to temporarily malfunction so he can finally get what he has wanted all along, for Thawne to reset the timeline to its original state, bringing Bruce back to life and taking his life in exchange. He is prepared to kill him and take his powers if that is what is needed. The last bullet from the machine gun is poised to strike its mark when Superman stops it, restating his commitment to not killing people, and then everything happened at once. The Flash stopped moving. Superman's kindness interfaced with his semi-clairvoyant abilities, showing him the hope that Kal-El could inspire in the world if he were allowed to live and get out there. But that hope is taken away from the cosmos the very next instant when Thomas Wayne shoots the alien dead with a kryptonite bullet. Cyborg loses it and starts wildly accusing Thomas of being mad, and the latter simply starts raving about how he only cares about his son and he will do anything to get him back. At this instant, the Atlantean fleet reveals that it has been stationary because it's waiting for backup. Invisible jets dot the northeastern skyline. The Amazonians and Atlanteans have formed an alliance that will conquer the entire galaxy, starting with America. What's more, they have forged an alliance with the new gods of Apocalypse and gained access to Darkseid's fearsome army. Witnessing all this chaos, destruction, and madness, Eobard Thawne picks up the bullet meant to kill him and acts upon the last words he registers Thomas Wayne saying, "Run." See, he realizes that since he is now free to shape reality any way he wants it to be, he sets about doing just that, but not before giving Thomas Wayne a little present, the bullet he took. He travels to the fateful night in Crime Alley and lodges it into Joe Chill's cranium, thus keeping the Waynes together and depriving the world of a Batman. And then he goes on to reimagine the entire universe in his own twisted concept of perfection. And because perfection only lasts for fractions of seconds for speedsters, his universe is never static. It is stuck in a cycle of constant and eternal rebirths, thanks to the deranged god, who now rules over its established reality, or rather, controls it. Marvelous verdict. The issues of Tales from the Dark Universe isn't for your average comic book reader. Let us explain what we mean by that. Writer Brian Hitch is a legendary creative, but sometimes his creativity tends to involve a lot of exposition and layering. It is not possible to achieve that within a single issue. Hitch does his best to make it so, and it ends up with more philosophical speech bubbles than action-packed splash pages. But trust us when we say, this is definitely the craziest Dark Multiverse story you will ever read. And yes, we are aware that it is already a reimagining of Flashpoint. There is something so disturbingly unnatural about the world Hitch has created that by the time you finish the issue, you will agree with Thomas Wayne's outburst on Cyborg when he asked him to fight and save the world he was living in. After Batman shoots Superman dead, Victor Stone chastises him for killing their only hope for saving the world. Thomas Wayne looks at him like a man possessed and screams, "Not this one. I don't want this one. I want the one that has my son in it." And looking at the entire story, we wholeheartedly agree with Dr. Wayne. Tales from the Dark Multiverse Flashpoint might be a little confusing at times because it covers one of the messier crisis events in DC history, but that's what makes it so great as well. Because if you're stuck in a universe that's always changing and no one is allowed to come in or go out, then are you really living? And is the answer to that question something you're comfortable with? And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.